In cinema, every glance is calculated, every frame rehearsed. What we see, what we're allowed to see, is the result of meticulous planning, angles, and performance. The camera is meant to observe, not to be observed. And yet, sometimes it happens. A moment barely noticeable, easily dismissed when someone on screen turns their eyes to the lens. Maybe just for a second, maybe a full stare. It's not part of the script. It's not a wink to the audience, like in Ferris Bueller or Deadpool. This isn't charming, it's unsettling. These aren't fourth wall breaks by design. These are slips, accidents, anomalies, or so we're told. An extra in the background staring directly into the lens, a main actor pausing for half a second too long, a child in a horror scene, eyes fixed on something just behind the camera crew. It's not meant to happen, but it did, and it raises a question few dare to ask. If the actors weren't supposed to see the camera, what were they really looking at? Today, we're not talking about bloopers. We're diving into 15 films where the fourth wall was broken accidentally, silently, and chillingly. Moments hidden in plain sight. Moments never acknowledged in interviews, commentaries, or scripts. Moments that feel like someone on screen saw something we didn't. Are these subconscious choices? Forgotten edits? Or is it possible, just possible, that someone, somewhere, was trying to be seen? These are the scenes that look back, and not in the way you expect. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. We all remember Hannibal Lecter's gaze, cold, knowing, surgical. But he isn't the only one who sees us. At the climax, when Clarice steps into the killer's basement, the camera becomes her eyes. Every sound echoes, every shadow looms. Then, for a fraction of a second, she turns and her eyes meet the lens. Directly. It's not panic, not confusion. It's recognition. As if, in that brief heartbeat of terror, she realizes something fundamental. She's not alone. Even in her solitude, we're there watching from the dark, unseen but present. It's the kind of accidental moment that defines the uncanny. Because once you see it, the balance shifts. Clarice isn't just the hunted anymore. She becomes the witness to us. And in that instant, the film stops being about monsters. It becomes about observers. About you. Cacche 2005. Michael Haneke's Cash is an exercise in discomfort. Stillness becomes suspicion. Distance becomes dread. In one long, motionless shot, Georges walks down a quiet street. The frame doesn't move. People pass by naturally until one man stops. He turns, he looks, and he doesn't move again. He isn't part of the story. He has no name. But for nearly 10 seconds, his gaze holds the audience in place, locking us into the same unease that defines the entire film. He's not threatening. He's not expressive. He's just aware. There's no cut, no reaction. Just that moment where fiction and reality blur into a single stare. Haneke never explained it. Critics never resolved it. But perhaps that's the point. Cash is about being watched, and about guilt you can't escape. Maybe this wasn't a mistake in the scene. Maybe it was a mirror, and we finally caught our own reflection. Hereditary, 2018. Grief is supposed to be private, but in Hereditary, even suffering feels observed. During the now famous dinner confrontation, tension erupts between mother and son. Toni Collette's rage consumes the frame, but when the camera cuts to Peter, something unexpected happens. For a brief second, he looks directly at us. Not at his mother, not into the void. At the viewer. It's a fleeting, raw moment. His expression isn't fear or anger, it's confusion, exhaustion, as if he's aware of the trap he's in. As if he knows he's being watched. Some dismiss it as an eyeline error. Others think it's Ari Aster's subconscious direction, an echo of the film's theme of unseen control. But maybe it's simpler and darker. Maybe Peter didn't just feel the weight of his family's curse. Maybe he felt ours. The unseen eyes behind the screen, witnessing his collapse. And for just a second, he looked back to make sure we were real. Possession, 1981. Andrzej Żuławski's Possession is a descent into emotional madness. It's a film that never gives you solid ground to stand on and then removes the ground altogether. In one quiet sequence, Mark speaks with a schoolteacher. The conversation is ordinary, controlled, but through a frosted glass door behind them, a motionless young man stands, staring in. He never blinks. He never shifts. He isn't acknowledged. You'd think it was a reflection until you realize his angle doesn't match anything in the room. There's no mention of this figure in production notes. He's not listed in the cast. There's no logic to his presence, and yet he's there, seared into the edge of the frame. Is he a mistake? A ghosted extra? A thematic echo? Or is he something the camera noticed before the story did? In a film about possession and the splitting of self, perhaps this was the moment where the film fractured and let someone else in. Eyes Wide Shut, 1992. 999. Everything in Eyes Wide Shut is veiled behind masks, behind silence, behind layers of power and performance. But sometimes, what's most unsettling is what steps out of those shadows and looks back. During the masked ritual, the camera glides past a line of anonymous participants. Most remain motionless, ornamental. Then, near a marble pillar, one masked figure turns his head and locks eyes with the camera. He doesn't blink. He doesn't react. He just observes. The others in the room continue, as if he doesn't exist. There's no mention of this figure in behind-the-scenes material. Kubrick never spoke of it, and yet the moment is clear, precise, lingering. In a film about surveillance, secrecy, and unseen hierarchies, the idea that someone within the ceremony might notice the audience changes the equation entirely. Maybe he wasn't watching Tom Cruise's character. Maybe he was watching us. No Country for Old Men, 2007. Anton Chigurh doesn't speak much, but silence was never meant to be this loud. In No Country for Old Men, every sound feels like a warning, every glance, a sentence. Then comes a moment too still to be coincidence. He's walking through a dim corridor, shadows stretching along the walls. The camera follows from behind, patient, unblinking. Then, he stops. Slowly, deliberately, he turns his head toward the camera. He doesn't smile. He doesn't threaten. He just looks long enough for it to feel deliberate, long enough for it to feel wrong. It's not framed as a scare, not emphasized in editing, yet it's impossible to ignore. For that second, it's as though Chigurh sees through the film and recognizes the watcher. The Coen brothers never mentioned the shot. It wasn't planned, but it stayed. Maybe it wasn't Chigurh breaking the fourth wall. Maybe it was fate turning to look us in the eye, reminding us that in this story, we're not spectators, we're witnesses. Poltergeist, 1982. Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist is full of chaos, walls bending, toys flying, ghosts manifesting through light. Yet in the noise, there's one shot that feels eerily quiet. During the bedroom storm scene, the camera tracks the family as they scream and duck for cover. Furniture levitates. Objects spin mid-air. Then, just for a blink, a reflection appears in the far corner of the room. A man's face. Expressionless, watching. It's visible in the background mirror, except there wasn't supposed to be one there. Production blueprints confirm it. No mirrors were built into that set. The reflection stays for less than a second, but it's sharp enough to feel deliberate, haunting enough to question everything. Crew member? Visual accident? Or something else caught by accident, something that never left? In a film where spirits cross into the living world through screens and static, maybe this wasn't an effect. Maybe the camera just captured what was already there. Looking back. Fight Club, 1999. Reality in Fight Club is already fragile. Tyler Durden flickers into existence between frames, rules dissolve, and everything familiar feels contaminated. But one quiet scene hides a rupture no one ever repaired. At a support group meeting, the camera pans across faces hopeless, broken, real. Then, almost mid-motion, one man looks directly into the lens. He doesn't blink. He doesn't react. He simply watches. There's no reason for it. He has no dialogue, no purpose in the story. He just sits there, acknowledging us. Fincher's filmmaking is notoriously precise. So how did this slip through? No deleted scenes, no mentions, no explanations. It's not Tyler's trick this time. It's something different, something wrong. In a story about losing control of your own narrative, this is the most unsettling moment of all. That one extra, quietly reminding us that maybe, just maybe, the film was aware of us the whole time. Don't Look Now, 1973. Venice is a maze of water and shadow, and in Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now, it becomes a mirror for grief, beautiful, distorted, impossible to escape. But hidden in that labyrinth is a moment no one planned. Inside a church, the camera drifts slowly past a congregation. Candles flicker. The air trembles. Then, without warning, a man in the pews turns and locks eyes with the camera. He doesn't look startled. He doesn't look lost. He looks like someone who was already expecting to be seen. The shot holds long enough for unease to settle in. Then he looks away, and the movie continues, pretending nothing happened. He's not listed among the extras. He appears in no stills, no credits, no documentation. It's as if he exists only for that single frame. In a film where perception is never to be trusted, this one moment feels like the film itself breaking character. Like Venice. For a heartbeat, notice the viewer standing on the other side of the screen. Signs, 2002. Signs trades spectacle for suggestion. Its fear comes not from what you see, but from what's almost there. During a sequence in the basement, dark, claustrophobic, Hush, the camera follows the family as they huddle in panic. The flashlight wavers across cluttered shelves, and just for a moment, barely a flash, a face appears behind a stack of boxes. Not an alien, not a family member. Human eyes, open, staring. It's easy to miss, easy to dismiss. But slow the frame, and there it is. Someone's watching from the dark and not moving. Shyamalan never acknowledged this moment. It doesn't appear in behind-the-scenes footage. The figure isn't in the call sheet, and yet, it's there. In a film about the unknown creeping into your home, this single stare feels more invasive than any extraterrestrial encounter, because it's not something out of this world. It's something inside ours, already in the room, already aware of us. The Others, 2001. Alejandro Amenabar's The Others whispers instead of screams. Every scene is muted, composed, fragile like glass under pressure. In one dimly lit dining room sequence, Grace sits with her children at the table, speaking softly under candlelight. Shadows dance. The camera circles. And then Nicholas, silent, still looks into the camera. It's not a slip, not an accident of eyeline. His gaze lingers, unblinking, direct. He isn't acting in that moment. He's watching us. The scene continues as if nothing happened. But something in that stare remains, long after the candles flicker out. Theories range from child actor nerves to directorial experimentation, but none account for the chill that follows when you realize he's not looking at Grace. He's not looking at anything in the room. He's looking through the frame. In a story about hidden truths and spectral presence, maybe this wasn't just an acting hiccup. Maybe Nicholas wasn't alone at the table. Goodfellas, 1990. Goodfellas is a film built on momentum. Every scene pulses with energy, paranoia, and tension. Nothing ever feels still, until it suddenly does. As Henry Hill's world begins to unravel under the weight of drugs, deceit, and fear, there's a quiet moment in the kitchen. The camera follows him in a daze, and in the background, Karen turns and looks directly at the lens. Just for a second. No dialogue, no dramatics, but it's unmistakable. Her expression isn't confident or composed, it's cautious, alert, the look of someone who's aware of being observed, but doesn't know by who. It doesn't happen again. It isn't addressed in commentary tracks, and Lorraine Bracco has never publicly acknowledged it. In a film that explores betrayal and constant surveillance, was this moment meant to exist, or was it an unfiltered reaction, captured and left untouched? Maybe Karen wasn't breaking the fourth wall. Maybe she was acknowledging the eyes behind it. The Blair Witch Project, 1999. By now, the Blair Witch Project has earned its place as a landmark in found footage horror. Its grainy realism blurred fiction and fact so well that many believed it was genuine, but buried within the film's improvisational chaos is a moment that no one cast or crew has ever explained. Right before Heather turns the camera on herself for her trembling confession, there's a quick pan across the forest, just trees, dark branches, and wind. Except, off to the far left, a man is standing, partially obscured and unmistakably real. He isn't reacting. He isn't part of the action. He's just looking at the camera. He's not Josh, not Mike, and certainly not the witch. Production notes claim no crew were present during those segments. Actors were sent into the woods alone. So who is he? He doesn't run, doesn't speak. He only watches, one frame, and then gone. Maybe it was a hiker. Maybe it was an error. Or maybe, in a film about being hunted, the real horror isn't what chases you, but what's already waiting for you off screen and watching. Children of Men, 2006. Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men is famous for its immersive, one-takes, and grim, grounded vision of a world falling apart. In one of its most celebrated sequences, a battle-scarred refugee zone chaos swallows the frame. Gunfire erupts, smoke fills the screen, and in the middle of it all, Theo navigates a war zone, the camera never cutting away. But as the camera pans across rubble and wounded bodies, there's a figure that breaks everything. A man sitting against a wall, staring straight into the lens. He isn't crying, isn't running. He simply watches still, focused, deliberate. It's not a glance, it's sustained eye contact, as if he sees beyond the scene. He's not credited. His presence isn't addressed in any official material. And yet, in this tightly choreographed take, he exists. And no one cut him out. Did he think the camera had stopped rolling? Did he mistake the shot? Or was this someone silently screaming to be noticed by us? In a movie about collapsing systems and dehumanized lives, this one gaze may say more than 1,000 explosions ever could. The Shining, 1980. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is a film dissected to death. Yet one particular frame still escapes all breakdowns and theories. As young Danny explores the endless halls of the Overlook Hotel, There's a brief, almost imperceptible moment right before he turns a corner when something else appears. Near the ceiling, barely lit, a shape can be made out. A human shape, a face, watching. It doesn't belong to Jack, nor to any known crew member, and it doesn't move. It just looks. The camera doesn't acknowledge it, the characters don't notice. But the face, the stare, it's directly into the lens, locked in, still, present. For a director like Kubrick, who choreographed every frame with surgical precision, this shouldn't be possible. Some claim it's a crew oversight, others a trick of shadow. But there's no lighting rig, no boom, no obvious explanation. Home video remasters kept it. Commentaries skipped it. And yet it lingers, unspoken. It isn't part of the story, but it's now part of the myth. Because in a film about ghosts trapped in place, the most haunting figure might not be one that chases Danny, but one that noticed us watching him. The Passion of Joan of Arc, 1928. Carl Theodor Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc is almost sacred in its intensity, an ocean of close-ups, silence, and human fragility captured on fragile celluloid. But one moment inside this masterpiece doesn't belong. As Joan stands before her judges, trembling yet unbroken, the camera lingers on her tear-streaked face. Behind her, in soft focus, sits a figure draped in black, still, unreadable. He shouldn't be there. When Joan lowers her eyes, the figure slowly lifts his head and stares into the lens. Not at Joan, not at the courtroom, at us. He's never identified, never mentioned in production archives, and yet he's there staring through nearly a century of film history, frozen in time. In a movie about faith and persecution, maybe this wasn't an accident at all. Maybe he wasn't a bystander in her story. Maybe he's a remnant of something older than cinema, a gaze that refuses to fade. And in that moment, you realize, Joan isn't the only one being watched. Some walls in cinema were never meant to be broken, but sometimes they break themselves. These glances, fleeting, fragile, often unnoticed, remind us that the screen isn't a boundary, it's a window, and sometimes what's on the other side notices us back. Were these accidents of production, forgotten extras, or proof that the camera, once rolling, captures more than we intended to? They saw the lens, they saw us, and now that you've seen them, you'll never unsee it. Tell us, which stare unsettled you the most? Was it the hidden figure, the actor's sudden awareness, or that 1 second when fiction looks straight through you? Leave your thoughts below. Subscribe for more hidden truths in cinema, and remember, when you press play, don't blink, because sometimes the film is already looking back.